I went from making $30,000 a year to finding my life partner and building a business that generated over $1 million in its first year. And, you know, we're doing millions of dollars a year now. I consider it a success. I consider it a win. Hey everybody, Randy here with Stay Broke Business Consulting. You want to know how I went from working for the state making $30,000 a year to building a business that generated over $1 million worth of revenue in its first year? We put out a short about this the other day, but now let's talk about it. The path from point A to point B was absolutely not a straight line. So let's get that off the table. I know when we put the short out, it's very catchy. It's supposed to make us sound like we have some magic potion or magic secret to take you from poor to wealthy overnight. That's just not how it worked, at least not for me. So like I keep saying, this channel is about being true to my story and my journey. And that's all we want to talk about here, because those are facts, right? That's what I went through. So let's get into it. It's true. I was working for the state, making around $30,000 for a year at an institution. And I took that job after the 2008 bubble burst. And not only did that happen, but where I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina, they also had a moratorium due to infrastructure issues, which meant they were issuing no new building permits. And at the time, I had a custom interior trim and cabinets, also made furniture, different stuff. And from there, I switched over to historic remodels to stay with the high-end stuff. And I was just miserable working around the homeowners and everything that went with it. And I had one of those moments, like I've talked about in other videos, where like, I'm done, I'm throwing my hands up, I quit. I just want to work a 9 to 5, have vacation, just relax and slow down. So that's what I did. I had an opportunity to get a job working for the state. Lots of paid time off, lots of sick time, lots of vacations. And I went there and I was absolutely miserable. I was not a happy person to be around. And, you know, my mental health declined significantly. And I don't feel like I definitely wasn't the best parent I could be or the best spouse I could be at the time. Part of that whole point was going through a divorce as well. But then fast forward a couple of years, I was there for a little while and had went through a divorce. And while I was working there, I met my future wife, or the woman who is my wife now, and also decided that I didn't want to be miserable anymore, and I didn't want to whine and complain about the issues I was having. I wanted to find a solution. So the first thing I did was quit my job and decided to go to the local college to start taking some classes. I focused on psychology classes because I felt like I needed to understand people a little bit better. And while I was doing that, I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was building some custom furniture on the side, just keeping a little bit of money coming in. And my wife was or my girlfriend at the time, she was in college, and she ended up graduating. We got engaged and then eventually got married. But after she graduated, she had a awesome job opportunity in Raleigh, North Carolina. So she moved up here to take on that job while I stayed back with the kids. And so they could finish out the school year. Then we all move up to Raleigh with no real idea of what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in business for myself, but it was time for her to, tackle her career and see what she could do. So I wanted to, pick up the slack, make sure that I was doing my part and helping with her part so that she could focus on this new career. So we made sure we got a property with a shop, and decided I was just going to build furniture and help take care of the kids. Mental health went down because I wasn't being challenged. I had no purpose. I didn't know what I was trying to do. I needed to do something different, and trying to figure out, all right, I know I want to start a business, but I don't know in what. My most value is in construction. That's what I've been doing most of my life. So I can always make money in construction, but what way do I want to go with it? I saw a guy doing some work on our road, and I stopped him and said, hey, I need a job. Are you hiring? And he said, what do you know how to do? And I said, everything. What do you need? And went to work for him. Worked for him for a while. Not making great money, but it was an opportunity, and I jumped on it, went all in on it. Then went from working for him to working with him, where I would go bid jobs, and then he would add his little fee, and I'd work under his license, with him supervising the job essentially. And then still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but taking my time because I had already failed at a couple businesses, and I know that like I'm going to take everything that I've learned and do it right this time, whatever that means. I was still figuring that out. So then I love motorcycles, and they put a new Indian motorcycle shop in our area. So we stopped by just to look at bikes. Met this retired cop. He was a salesman there, and he was just a talker. So he just starts talking to me and my wife, giving us his whole life story. And it was pretty cool. It was super engaging, and it led to, him asking what I do, and I work in construction. And then he tells me his wife works in construction. She works for a large national production builder. I was like, oh, that's cool. I've never worked in production. I've always been custom. But, I'd be interested in seeing what a job like that would look like, because he mentioned that they were always hiring. So he asked if we were going to buy the bike, and my wife looked at him and said, if you get my husband a job, we'll come back and buy a motorcycle from you. Didn't hear anything from them for a while. And then out of the blue, a few months later, I get a call, and she did what she said, or they did what they said they were going to do. She referred me. I got an interview and went in there knowing that, like, even though I could build a house myself, I had never been a construction manager, and I'd never worked in the production industry. I'd never worked with like real builder software or anything like that. So going into it, I knew I was going to have to sell myself. I went in dressed in a suit and tie, prepared as I could be, sat down with two guys, and they started interviewing me, and I pulled out my best sales pitch. I sold them 110%, and they even said it, and I heard it later from some other people after I was hired, that I was the best interview that they had ever done. And like, they don't know how it happened, but I went in there as a favor, and they didn't think they were going to hire me because I didn't have the right experience. But somehow I talked them into it, and they were all right with that. So they gave me a job working for one of the largest production builders. But still, I had my sights set on starting my own business. I just didn't know what. I didn't want to be just another framer, just another landscaper, just another plumber, trade, whatever trade you want to talk about. Like, I didn't want to be just another one out of a pile. I had been through that, and when things get slow, if you don't have a niche, now all of a sudden you're getting undercut, or you're trying to cut your prices, and now it gets hard to live because there's so much competition. So like, I knew that going into this new industry with no real idea of the industry, that if I kept my mind open and kept on the lookout, I would find something that nobody else was seeing. I was hoping to be able to do it in a year or less. Of course, I didn't tell the people that were hiring me that I wasn't planning on being there long term, because plans change. Anything could have happened, and I could have needed to stay there for multiple years. Fortunately, I didn't. I was working about an hour away from home, and I wasn't home a lot between my hours I was working and then heading into the busy season. I was even sleeping in a family member's house because I was working so late and going back in so early the next morning. And the company was also going through a buyout at the time, so things were just real sensitive and touchy, and a big changeover in management, and it was causing grief at work, grief at home. Like, things just were not good. And around the same time, I had caught on to an idea. I saw some things changing in the requirements for the engineering side, the engineering inspections. So I started looking into that, doing some research, talking to some people in the industry, seeing what I had to do to get licensed. And, now we know I was looking at the utility side of things. One of the worst days we had that ended up turning into one of the best. My wife had just had our 5th child, and she was starting her new job that day, and going back to work, starting in a new company. And we had an argument before she went to work, and I kind of blew up, and it was because I was miserable and I was making everybody else miserable. And I said, that's it, I'm done, I'm quitting my job. I think I have a plan, but I gotta quit. Like, I cannot do this anymore. I'm not being the man I need to be, and I'm not being who I need to be for my family. Something's got to change. So she said, you are absolutely not. We just had our 5th kid. There's no way you can go quit your job today. I texted her by lunch and said, hey, I put in my 2 weeks notice today. But it's going to be all right. We're going to figure it out. And as mad as she was at me, she trusted me. But it got a little worse when I came home and said, like, I got to go clear my head. And I packed up my motorcycle with my camping and fishing gear and rode to the mountains. Said I'll be back in a few days. I ended up going and camping and fishing by myself. I don't think I said more than 5 words to anybody the whole time I was gone. By the time I got back, I had a business plan. I knew what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. And like I said, she trusted me and was following me into it. She was uncomfortable, but I took her to a couple meetings with me. We met with some people, and after she saw like there was a need for what I was offering, she got a little more comfortable, and things started from there. I was going to start the business with me and another guy, and then we got introduced to some other people that were trying to start a business at the same time that had some equipment and utility license, which meant I could wait a little bit to get my utility license. With that, we picked up a contract and started our work, and I was running the whole field by myself, and one of the guys was just doing the office work. The other guy was more worried about his girlfriend, and the other guy was kind of retired. He had some money that he was going to invest into it, and that was kind of his spot. So the guy that was worried about his girlfriend, that ended up not working out. He went his own direction, which left 3 of us, and we were off to the races. I hired a couple guys that I knew. There was 3 of us. We had 1 truck, half broken down trailer, and we just started showing up 7 o'clock in the morning, trying to fulfill the 1 contract we had. While we were doing that, every night I would go and do sales. I would go to these builders, including the one that I had just left, and try and pitch them on the idea of what we were building. And I would do that every single day, 7 days a week, and till I finally found my way in with a couple of the production builders, and that's where things really started to pick up. And I wasn't home for probably 2 years. I was working all day out in the field, doing sales all through the end of the day, and then when I was home, I was on phone calls all night. And we were renting equipment. My truck was not built for the stuff we were hauling. It ended up blowing up. We were borrowing trailers. We were doing everything we could just to scrape by until it could take off. Of course, we were trying to pitch them on a utility service that wasn't a thing and trying to explain to them that it was going to be a thing. They weren't accepting that, so we had to take on a couple services that I knew that all of the builders were struggling with. So we started doing erosion control, some grading, and pressure washing, knowing that this is not what we wanted to be doing. There's too much competition. The turnover is too great. It's hard to win contracts. Everybody undercuts everybody, but it was our way to get the foot in the door. So it meant more time doing stuff we didn't want to, but I knew at the end, like what I was planning, I believed wholeheartedly it was going to work to do just the utility stuff. A story for another day. The partnership ended abruptly. I had to buy them out of the company, and that's when Jen entered the picture, and her and I rebuilt everything from there. We survived COVID. We went through a lot of changes, and it all got to this point. But we can get more into the later years of the business in another video. But the first year was absolutely brutal. And then whenever it came time to make a choice on, picking our clients or getting rid of my partners, at that point I was exhausted and I didn't know if I had it in me to start over again. Luckily, I was able to find a way to buy them out and take over the whole business, and that was a struggle. It pretty much meant I made no money for the next 3 years while I was trying to finish paying off the business. But like I said, that's another video for another day. Don't want to bore you too much. You got to subscribe. I got a pretty interesting journey. There's a lot that happened before this journey, and there's a lot that happened after. There's a lot that happened after where I'm stopping. So make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and keep tuning back in. The goal here is to give a little bit of hope, because there's many times I've been down and out. There's things that popped up that there was no way I could see them coming. There's a lot of lessons learned because I put myself in situations by not doing the proper research, by getting overzealous, getting too excited, and jumping into things. I went from making $30,000 a year to finding my life partner and building a business that generated over $1 million in its first year. And, we're doing millions of dollars a year now. And I consider it a success. I consider it a win. I'm able to run that company and head on this new adventure at the same time. And I'm glad you guys are joining for the ride. So continue to tune back in. Stay broke.